So today, lads, we're going to talk a little bit about the fourth quarter, and we're going to be talking a little bit about how the Atlanta Dream, in my opinion, just had no answer for Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever in that fourth quarter. And realistically, for quite a bit of the second half, they had no answer for an aggressive Caitlin Clark.
The Atlanta Dream coach had absolutely no answer for Caitlin Clark, and honestly, this isn't the first time a coach would find themselves shocked at how good she had played. When the final buzzer sounded on the Indiana Fever's dominant 99-82 victory over the Atlanta Dream, you could see it written all over the Dream coaching staff's faces. They had no clue how to contain the phenomenon that is Caitlin Clark.
Let me say this about the Atlanta Dream. Y'all was hanging in there for 2 quarters, but then y'all ran out of gas. Cause you know why? The Indiana Fever ran y'all out y'all own building, and it was a sight to see. Y'all was huffing and puffing, trying to get some air and find some extra wind, and y'all couldn't.
This is what happens when players foolishly claim she's the 9th best point guard in the league. She doesn't listen to the haters, she doesn't get caught up in the noise, and she certainly doesn't let their rankings define her. No, Caitlin Clark does her talking on the floor, and she wins easily for her team.
Today, there's no surprise that the Indiana Fever looked best tonight when the offense was ran through Caitlin Clark. There's no surprise that the offense looked best tonight when we pushed the ball off of a make, pushed the ball off of a miss. There's no surprise that the Indiana Fever looked best tonight when Caitlin Clark was surrounded by players that don't have an ego, surrounded by players that said, I'm going to be MVP of the WNBA this year. You see how easy it is when you just let Caitlin play ball and others follow suit?
What we witnessed against the Atlanta Dream wasn't just a basketball game. It was a statement. It was Caitlin Clark finally being allowed the freedom to play her own way, to play fast, and to have everyone dictated through her. And look how she absolutely dominated the Atlanta Dream with her complete performance in that game. Even though she finished with 12 points, her impact was immeasurable, recording 9 assists and controlling the tempo of the game.
They made sure Caitlin Clark had the ball in her hands. She became the creator of offense. That's what we've been saying. Her and Aaliyah Boston, I believe it was 4 times, got the Stockton-Malone 2-man game working. Dantas got involved at one point with Caitlin Clark. Caitlin was still off on her shooting tonight. But
the most remarkable part, Stephanie White finally let Caitlin Clark play the way she wants to play, fast-paced, aggressive, and letting everything flow through her. She didn't even need to land all her 3-pointers to put on a statement show that night. The Dream coach had prepared for everything, but he hadn't prepared for an unleashed Caitlin Clark operating at full throttle.
Even when she wasn't exactly getting when it wasn't her putting the ball in the basket or her showing up on the stat sheet, she was burning Jordan Canada. And people don't understand how good Jordan Canada is on defense. She was absolutely burning Jordan Canada. Canada could not stay in front of her. And that is a big thing. That is genuinely a big, big thing. That if you can't stay in front of her, it creates a space for everybody else. And there were some hockey assists. There was good ball movement. There was a lot of things. There was a lot of real positives when it came to Caitlin Clark today.
You know what's beautiful about this whole situation? The Dream coaching staff spent countless hours studying film, devising defensive schemes, and plotting ways to neutralize Clark's impact. They probably had meetings about double-teaming her, about pressuring her full court, about making her life difficult every single possession. But when the game was over, when the scoreboard read 99-82 in favor of the Fever, the Dream coach was left speechless because his team had just been systematically dismantled by a player who was supposedly ranked as the league's 9th best point guard.
Obviously, tough game. I thought we had a good first half. We were really competitive. Second half, we just had so many defensive breakdowns, and give them credit. They were getting extra possessions, and those extra possessions were turning into points just about every single time. So, just valuing ending their possession. It's not enough to force a tough shot. We got to come down with the ball. And then, we had some defensive breakdowns that they made us pay for. They were able to extend the lead, and then at the end we had do some gambling and do some things that really we're not that equipped to do.
If you are enjoying, please subscribe. This isn't an isolated incident, folks. Coaches across the WNBA have been left scratching their heads after facing Caitlin Clark. Remember when opposing coaches thought they had her figured out? Remember when they believed the college to professional transition would humble her? Instead, she's consistently proving that she's not just adapting to the WNBA level, she's redefining what excellence looks like at this level. The irony is absolutely delicious. These same coaches who game plan specifically to stop her, who alter their entire defensive philosophy when she's on the court, somehow voted her as the 9th best guard in the league. They guard her like she's prime Michael Jordan, they celebrate trying to hurt her, and they downplay her impact any chance they get. But when the lights are brightest and the games matter most, they're the ones left looking foolish.
The Atlanta Dream were able to really neutralize Caitlin Clark in the first half, and I know Caitlin Clark had 5 first half assists, but they were able to neutralize Caitlin Clark's impact on the game in that first half. And in the second half, regardless of the box score numbers, how Caitlin completely took over. So the big way they were able to neutralize Caitlin Clark, and I think it was almost an issue with Stephanie White as much as anything, is they were manhandling.
Against the Atlanta Dream, we saw something special unfold. We saw Stephanie White finally embrace what Iowa fans knew all along, that Caitlin Clark is most dangerous when she's allowed to dictate the pace and flow of the game. For too long this season, we've watched White try to fit Clark into a system that wasn't designed for her unique skill set. We've seen the frustration on Clark's face when she's relegated to standing in the corner while other players bring the ball up court, but against the Atlantic Dream, everything changed. White finally understood that trying to contain Clark's natural instincts was like trying to cage a hurricane. When you have a generational talent on your roster, you don't force them to conform to your system, you build your system around them. And that's exactly what we witnessed.
But you saw Clark sort of gaining her rhythm as the game went along, sort of returning to her form as the game went along, finding that pep in her step as the game went along, even though the shooting numbers were tour dates again, and she's got to find that shooting stroke at some point. Look, it can't go on all year, but you understand where some of those struggles come from when you deal with a quad injury and then a groin injury, and you're thrust back into the lineup and you're trying to find your way. But I do think it was the way that Clark found her way to the basket that was the difference in this game, really. That was what changed the dynamics of this game.
The Dream coach watched helplessly as Clark orchestrated the Fever's offense with the precision of a master conductor. She was creating opportunities for teammates, finding passing lanes that didn't exist, and making defensive adjustments that left Atlanta scrambling to keep up. Even when her shots weren't falling from beyond the arc, she was still controlling every aspect of the game. What made this performance even more impressive was how Clark elevated her teammates. This is something the haters never want to acknowledge. Her ability to make everyone around her better.
Been an inconsistent ride for Indiana and for Clark as well, who's had to fight through a lot of injuries. But I think the encouraging thing from Cece was the fight that she showed on the floor. Clearly, she's not quite at 100%, still working her way back, hasn't found her 3-ball yet, but what she did was attack. She used the physicality against the defenders by putting her head down and going to the basket. That opened things up for her playmaking, which of course is another genius aspect of her game. Once that started clicking, the Fever ran away with things. Sophie Cunningham was everywhere. Clark had it going with Aaliyah Boston again. Kelsey Mitchell was cooking. And all of a sudden, you look up and the Fever are lighting up the scoreboard.
When Clark is playing her style of basketball, when she's allowed to push the pace and create in transition, the entire Fever roster becomes more dangerous. Kelsey Mitchell gets better looks, Aaliyah Boston operates more effectively in the post, and role players like Sophie Cunningham find themselves wide open for three-point attempts. The Dream coach had no answer for this version of Caitlin Clark, because this version is unstoppable. When she's playing with confidence, when she's dictating the tempo, when she's allowed to be the floor general that made her a household name at Iowa, she transforms from a very good player into a transcendent one.
They were manhandling Caitlin Clark early in that game. Like, they had 2 hands on her. They were fully getting into the we are grabbing her and we don't really care. Like, that was their goal. Their goal was they were out there to maul Caitlin Clark. They had they had absolutely no intention of doing anything other than mauling Caitlin Clark.
Let's talk about that 9th best point guard nonsense for a moment. The cognitive dissonance is stunning. These coaches spend hours preparing for her. They design specific defensive schemes just to slow her down. They lose sleep worrying about how to contain her impact, and then they turn around and vote her as the 9th best guard in the league. It's either pure jealousy or complete delusion, because their actions on the court tell a completely different story. The truth is, coaches don't know how to defend her, and neither do players. She's only going to get better with more momentum from more games. Every time she steps on the court, she's adding new dimensions to her game. Every time opponents think they've found a way to stop her, she unveils a new weapon in her arsenal. What we're witnessing is the evolution of a player who is already great, becoming something even more special. The college version of Caitlin Clark was impressive, but this professional version, the one who's learning to navigate double teams, who's adjusting to the physicality of the WNBA, who's developing chemistry with new teammates, this version is downright scary for opposing coaches.
And this was a really nice all-around game from the Indiana Fever. And some may ask, well, Rhodes, do you feel better about Stephanie White? No, not at all. Because until she proves night in and night out she's willing to put the ball into Caitlin Clark's hand and let her be the creator and innovator on offense, I will not be sold. I will not be sold. The fact is, Caitlin's going to start knocking these shots back down at some point. And all of a sudden, her statistics are going to blow up.
Yet the Atlanta Dream coach's speechless reaction tells us everything we need to know about where Clark truly ranks among the league's elite. You don't game plan that extensively for the 9th best anything. You don't lose sleep over the 9th best anything. You don't completely alter your defensive philosophy for the 9th best anything. Stephanie White deserves credit for finally recognizing what many of us have been saying all season, that Caitlin Clark is most effective when she's playing her natural game. The fast-paced, up-tempo style that made her a legend at Iowa is the same style that makes her nearly unstoppable at the professional level. When she's allowed to push the pace, when she's given the freedom to create, when she's not constrained by rigid offensive schemes, she becomes the player that coaches have nightmares about defending. The beauty of Clark's performance against Atlanta wasn't just in the statistics, though her 9 assists and overall floor leadership were impressive. It was in the way she controlled the emotional flow of the game. Every time Atlanta seemed to build momentum, Clark would make a play that shifted the energy back to Indiana. Every time the Dream looked like they might make a run, Clark would find a way to stem the tide.
Instead of trying to put a square peg in a round hole, this was a tale of two halves. A tale of two halves. A half where the Indiana Fever let Jordan Canada have wide open shots, and a half where they decided to play defense and shut Jordan Canada down and not let Ryan Howard get off. Interesting. A half where we had Caitlin off ball and sitting a lot, sitting on the bench, riding away in the first half, and the second half where, oh my God, she's in the game. Oh my God, they're giving her the ball.
This is what elite point guards do. They don't just score points or rack up assists. They control the pulse of the game. They determine when to speed up, when to slow down, when to take over personally, and when to get their teammates involved. Clark demonstrated all of these qualities against Atlanta, and the Dream coach was left with no answers. The most frustrating part for opposing coaches is that Clark's impact extends far beyond the box score. Her presence on the court changes how defenses have to operate. Teams can't help off their assignments because she'll find the open player. They can't sag back in a zone because she'll torch them from three-point range. They can't press her full court because she'll use her size and vision to find teammates for easy baskets.
This year, and it's just all right, I'm gonna accept that contact, I'm gonna go through it, and I'm gonna score on you. And one. Put the points on the board. You know, Caitlin Clark doing it there. Here's a closer look at that play to sort of give you, an idea of what took place, and the she accepts the contact, gives some back herself, and ultimately gets the bucket. By the way, some size on that Dream team, obviously, with Griner inside, and Jones got in foul trouble, which helped. Jordan Canada.
This multi-dimensional impact is what separates truly elite players from merely good ones. Clark doesn't just beat you one way, she beats you in whatever way the game dictates. If you take away her three-point shooting, she'll find her teammates. If you take away her passing lanes, she'll attack the rim. If you send help defenders, she'll make the right read every time. The Atlanta Dream coach learned this lesson the hard way. His team entered the game with a solid defensive game plan. But by the end of the night, they had been thoroughly outclassed by a player who was supposedly ranked 9th among her peers. The final score of 99-82 doesn't even tell the full story of how completely the Fever controlled that game once Clark was allowed to operate freely. What makes this even more impressive is that Clark accomplished all of this while still dealing with the lingering effects of her recent injury concerns. She's been managing various ailments throughout the season, yet she continues to perform at an elite level. Lesser players would use injuries as an excuse for diminished performance, but Clark has used them as motivation to find new ways to impact winning.
Credit, they were getting extra possessions, and those extra possessions were turning into points just about every single time. So, just valuing ending their possession. It's not enough to force a tough shot. We got to come down with the ball. And then, we had some defensive breakdowns that they made us pay for. They were able to extend the lead. And then at the end, we had to, do some gambling and do some things that really were not that equipped to do. And they made us pay for that as well. And that kind of, made the game a little more lopsided.
The message to the rest of the WNBA is clear. Caitlin Clark is not just surviving at the professional level, she's thriving. She's not just adapting to the league, she's changing it. And coaches who continue to underestimate her, who continue to vote her as the 9th best anything, are going to find themselves in the same position as the Atlanta Dream coach, speechless and searching for answers that don't exist. Caitlin Clark is the best point guard in the WNBA, and that's how it is. Coaches don't know how to defend her, and neither do players. She's only going to get better with more momentum for more games, and that should terrify every opposing coach in the league. The Atlanta Dream coach learned this lesson the hard way, but he won't be the last one left speechless by the phenomenon that is Caitlin Clark.